The bitter November wind whispered through the air, stirring the crisp, fallen leaves that danced around Ethan Sinclair's polished shoes. As he stood solemnly before his father's grave, a crushing wave of long-held regret tightened its grip around his chest like an invisible vice. He subtly adjusted the cuff of his impeccably tailored coat, his usual shield, his everyday armor against a harsh, demanding world. But today it felt meaningless. Hollow. He had built empires from nothing. Entire industries bowed to his vision. Struggling companies had transformed under his leadership into towering monuments of wealth and success. He had wealth, power, prestige, everything the world claimed to value. But in this quiet, sacred place, standing before a name etched in stone, none of it meant a damn thing. His father had been the opposite of everything Ethan had become, a modest factory worker who found strength in simplicity, who believed, stubbornly, in the honest dignity of labor and the quiet strength of kindness. They had parted ways with harsh words and silence years ago. Ethan had been chasing dreams, futures his father couldn't understand. And now there was no bridge left to cross the distance between them. Just silence. The cemetery around him stood still and silent, almost hauntingly so. Only the soft rustle of distant trees and the occasional chirp from birds preparing for the long, punishing winter dared break that silence. Ethan bowed his head, trying to find peace, trying to feel something. But then, a gentle sound, barely more than a breath, carried through the cold air. His brows drew together. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the graveyard's edge. There, half hidden under a worn and torn blanket, were two little girls. Huddled close, shivering in the cold, they watched him with wide, frightened eyes. Their faces identical. Twins. No older than 7, maybe younger. Their clothes were thin, frayed from wear. Their hair tangled from nights, without a home. Tiny hands clutched each other desperately, like the world had tried to take everything from them and might try again. Something deep in Ethan's heart, a place he'd long since buried, stirred. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper, softer than he'd meant. The girls exchanged a look, nervous and unsure. Then the braver of the two, the one who dared to meet his eyes, answered. "We came to talk to Grandpa." His breath caught in his chest.
"Grandpa?"
The smaller girl gave a slow, serious nod and pointed to the grave beside his father's. Ethan's gaze followed the tiny finger and froze. His eyes locked onto a name that hit him like ice. Joseph Sinclair, right next to his father. Ethan dropped to one knee, now eye level with them, his mind racing through half-remembered stories and hazy memories. He was your grandpa?" he asked, voice unsteady. The brave girl sniffled. "Mom said he was. But she got sick. We had nowhere to go after that." A lump formed in Ethan's throat, thick and heavy. He had no siblings. His mother had died when he was still a child. But his father, he had mentioned someone once. A half-brother. Long gone. Lost to time. Could it be? "Where's your mom now?" he asked, his voice breaking just slightly. The younger one's lip trembled, tears forming in her eyes. "She went to heaven." And just like that, the air vanished from his lungs. These two little girls, his nieces, had no one. Speaking to a grandfather they'd never met. Holding on to the memory of a mother who would never come back. Alone in a world too cold and too cruel. And there he was, Ethan Sinclair, a man who could buy anything, who could move mountains with a phone call. Yet he stood there with empty hands and a hollower heart. For the first time in what felt like forever, he remembered his father's voice, deep, steady, kind. "Take care of people, Ethan. Money means nothing if you never use it for something good." He looked at the girls again. Their fragile bodies trembled against the wind. And in that moment something inside him cracked.
Shattered.
His hand moved instinctively, not to his wallet, not for charity, but to his phone. One call, then another. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. That very night, those two little girls curled up in warm beds for the first time in what must have felt like ages. their tiny fingers wrapped tightly around Ethan's, scared he might vanish like everyone else had. But he didn't. He stayed. Days bled into weeks. Paperwork was signed. Courts were visited. And then, under the soft, falling snow of a December morning, Ethan Sinclair walked out of the courthouse, not alone, but with two little girls clinging to him, officially under his care. Yes, he had built businesses, controlled boardrooms, changed the game. But nothing, not one thing, he had ever created came close to what he held now. The journey wasn't easy. The girls were cautious, shadows of abandonment and grief still lingering behind their eyes. In Ethan's sprawling mansion, they clung to each other at night, too afraid to believe that warmth like this could last. He brought in the best caregivers, filled their rooms with beautiful things, dresses, toys, books, everything they could need. But he soon realized what they needed most wasn't something he could buy. It was him, his presence, his time. So he started showing up, sitting down at the dinner table, reading stories by the soft crackle of the fireplace. He learned how to braid tiny strands of hair with careful fingers, how to chase away nightmares with just a hug, how to hold their hands and make them feel safe. And slowly, something changed. The fear in their eyes began to fade, replaced with something else, something he hadn't seen in years. Hope. Hope. He had forgotten what it even looked like, what it felt like to believe in something bigger than yourself, to see light at the end of the tunnel, and actually trust it wasn't just another oncoming train. But now, months later, with winter having melted into spring, Ethan Sinclair found himself once again standing before that familiar grave, the final resting place of the man who had taught him more than he'd ever realized. This time, though, he smiled. A soft, genuine smile, not the polished one he wore at board meetings or charity galas. No, this smile came from somewhere much deeper. "You were right, Dad," he murmured, his voice barely louder than the breeze. He glanced down at the two small hands wrapped tightly in his, one on each side. He gave them a gentle squeeze, like an anchor grounding him in that moment. "Money, wealth, all of it means nothing," he continued, the words carried softly by the wind. "Not if you don't use it for something that matters. For someone who matters." The wind stirred again, circling around him. But it wasn't harsh or biting like it had been before. It didn't feel empty or cold. It felt warm, gentle, almost like an embrace. And just for a fleeting moment, he closed his eyes and let it wash over him. It felt like his father was there. Not in the ground, not in the past, but right there beside him. Like he was watching, like he was proud. And for the first time in a long, long time, Ethan Sinclair believed he might actually deserve it.